Hi everyone, welcome back to kttp. Today we have a very special guest, Padmini. She is a product executive with 20 plus years of experience at Oracle, SAP, and most recently as the Vice President of Product at TELUS. We're super excited to have her here, and would you like to say anything, Padmini?
I'm very excited to be here. I'm always looking for opportunities to converse and have a dialogue, so looking forward to this.
Awesome, yeah, let's just jump right into it. So we wanted to ask you, why did you decide to pursue a career in product? Could you elaborate on your career path so far?
Sure. Be a little bit drawn out here because it's 20 plus years, obviously. I came to product management from an early mindset of curiosity. That curiosity was encouraged and fueled by my family, so very grateful for that. I loved taking apart built things when I was a kid, just to see how it worked and put them back as a challenge, right? So whether it was transistors or watches, even attempted to take apart a light bulb, and that didn't go down too well. For various reasons, I could not translate this passion into education, choosing a bachelor's degree in commerce instead of engineering, but quickly veered to all things factory, materials management, production planning. So anything that was in the built environment. Fast forward now, when I was at client sites in India, actually, fast forward to when I was at client sites in India and then in Singapore. I was auditing or consulting or installing or supporting software implementations. I soon became the one logging the highest number of bugs and enhancements, and this enabled me to work with engineers in the US, long drawn out phone calls, just trying to problem solve. And this also meant engineers were calling me to understand the customer use case and why, the what, and debate on the how can we solution this, how can we fix the issues. So I soon realized that product is the one role that truly sits at that intersection of understanding the customer needs, the business goals, the technological feasibility, and that's where my career path started. It started at customer sites, in the trenches, and then led to headquarters, defining problems and having many fun and grueling sessions with engineers, finding and designing solutions, debating, arguing, it's all fun. From there, I moved into a more strategic role where I realized that my greatest satisfaction came from prioritizing what to build and why it mattered. I think double underscoring the why it mattered. Since those early days, I've had the opportunity to work on solving business problems and across industries, global supply chains, and with the latest in technology. So that journey took me from early client server solutions to edge computing, from relational database backed applications to data and AI ML driven applications, SaaS platforms to marketplaces. It's a continuous journey, and you know this too. It's never boring. It's always one of learning and adaptation, and that's what I find so exciting about product.
That sounds terrific. And definitely a very elaborative career, and we're just so happy to have you on the podcast as well. But just touching on that, just wanted to know what's the main skill you've learned as a product leader in the last like 15, 20 years? And what do you think is the main skill that future product leaders or product people should have?
Yeah, I think there are three main crucial skills, I call it. And interestingly enough, they're all soft skills, right? So empathy, communication, and as I mentioned, a strong sense of curiosity. Everything else, like technical skills, domain knowledge, and even operational excellence, can be acquired and refined over time. So let's just look at each of those three, right? Empathy allows you to truly understand your users, their pain points, their motivations. And then it also allows you to balance the financial and other impact goals of your business that you're working for or that you're running yourself. That's that value proposition, product market fit, gap analysis, the intersection between that technical feasibility and what really matters. All of that is got to be rooted in empathy for what the product must deliver and how it gets used. Otherwise, we're over engineering and building things that sit on the shelf for very long periods of time. Communication is second. I mean, everything that we do in product is about communication, whether it's talking to engineers and translating business value proposition to technology, or whether it's looking creative solutions with solutioning with design and engineering, whether it's convincing the customers to change the way they do things, whether it's working with go-to-market and sales and marketing and creating that influence of why users and customers must choose our product over competition. They all require communication. So that's very, very important. And it is about how can we bring a shared vision together. It's not about, here is my idea, I take it forward. It's about how can everybody sort of hone in on a common vision and purpose. And lastly, curiosity. I spoke about curiosity being my front and center. I continue to stay curious. I think I'll stay curious until my last days on Earth. It's just what drives us to ask the right questions, right? It allows us to dig into the data, not just accept things as is. It asks us to question status. It makes us question status quo, and that's what helps us discover opportunities. So again, you can have all the technical knowledge in the world, but without these three, I think it's difficult to be an effective PM. I think as we go forward, to answer your second part of the question, I really think obviously technology keeps making every human being evolve, and so does the product function. Many people come into product from different areas. Like I came in from consulting and client side support, right? Many engineers come in and become product managers because these were very distinct functions in the past. I think as AI comes to play, I see that engineering design, product management, and product marketing, all of these distinct functions are going to come together. These are, at the end of the day, this is an end-to-end process flow, right? Just like anything else. Ideating on a product, creating the early products, testing it in the market, piloting it, building it out, launching it. These have been fragmented and broken apart, and many roles have been created. And I see the fusion of these roles. And so for a product manager, I believe that having a wider variety of experiences that you would build upon as you start your early career, whether it's coding, whether it now, of course, vibe coding, whether it is designing, whether it is speaking with customers, presentations, communication skills development. I would see bringing all this together is going to be important as you develop your skill sets. It's no longer just writing requirement specifications. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was some really great advice. I really like the bit on empathy. I think it's so important. At the end of the day, you need to put yourself in the shoes of your users, along with talking with everyone else, the stakeholders, etc. But I wanted to find out from you, how do you see the role of a product leader or a product manager evolving in the next 5 years? Is there anything you're most excited about or anything to watch out for?
Yes, I think everyone's talking about the rise of AI and machine learning. It used to be automation, right? And now with AI, we are replacing significant human functions with AI, with machine-based automation or robotic automation, as we want to talk about. So I think we'll see a shift from simply building features to building more intelligent, personalized experiences. We'll see a shift from being reactive to user needs to being more anticipatory or proactive to user needs. And I also think user experience as we know it will fundamentally morph and evolve into what I think are like visual, auditory, and touch-based experiences. So we'll see agents servicing, interpreting, and even manipulating such experiences in the back end. And the human in the loop is really using their senses, right? Whether it's vision or hearing or speech or touch. So it will become more of a sensory experience, I think, than artificially created experiences, which we used to try and develop. Let me give you an example, right? When I was I was working with a purchasing agent and with some data scientists, and some of the early data-driven statistical analysis that had to be presented. The data scientist presented it with some really complicated but beautiful charts, right? Spider web charts, and you name it. But when we presented it to the simple buyer who's simply looking for, do I buy now? And is this the right price? Those charts became meaningless, right? So I see that AI will help us translate a lot of that complexity into something much more simple. And that's what I think product managers should strive for. And I also see that the evolution of AI will actually be good for the most part, right? And there's always the dark side to technology. Let's not go there, right? But I do see that, for example, I'll see doctors probably upskilling to truly triangulate across multiple related faculties instead of just knowing one thing and relying on the system to tell them what to do next. It's probably going to be feasible for them to become more aware of the complex nature of our body as a system. Second, I see engineers would probably hopefully get back to innovating and not just creating code. I'll look at our recent work here, Pavan, from farm workers or maintenance workers. I think we'll see them focusing on specific problems to fix instead of trying to find the problem. I do hope teachers will focus on building critical thinking and analytical skills in students, making the time to address all levels of learning, because AI makes the rest of it, like curriculum creation and test reviews and all of that, easier. So they have more time. So I do see, I can go on, right? I do see the goodness of how AI will serve specific user base, as long as folks in product are actually able to see that and anticipate that opportunity rather than wait for the user to tell them what to do. In fact, that's one of my pet peeves about product managers. I see many product managers just asking the customers, so what do you want to see in the product? And that's the wrong question to start with. But more about that later. So yeah, I think AI applied to robots and robotic software agents will reduce workload, remove redundancy, and I'll see that fundamentally shift. I'm also very excited to see how product managers can reinvent themselves, right? So for example, it's not just about understanding the customer need and translating that to engineering and design anymore, right? It's got to be about, how do I ideate on the product? How do I pilot a product? How do I monetize it? What's the value that's monetizable, and how do you set the right price? How do we market it? And how do we, what is actually going to result in that first bite of the product? And then how are they going to come back and continuously use the product? So ongoing adoption. I know we all say product managers are naturally supposed to think of all that, but do we really, right? So I think in future, this is going to become very, very critical, that when a product manager is focusing on a problem, that they're actually thinking not just about the idea, not just about what the user has told them, but about all stages of the product life cycle, and bring that to the design front. And again, hopefully AI will help bring that together rather than piecemeal it further. So with that, I might as well ask you as well, right? How do you see, I mean, your new entrants into this market, into product and consulting and solutioning. So I would love to hear from you as well. What do you see are some of the trends in the next few years?
Yeah, personally, I've noticed the role of a product manager changing more in the sense where it becomes more encompassing with engineering as well. So I think a lot of the expectation will shift towards being able to provide code, a potential solution and design, and then having the skills to think about how to scale it and then possibly even do it yourself, and then only rely on engineers for more back-end infrastructure, database, like extremely technical things. But that's kind of how I see where the role is shifting towards.
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
I agree with that, but I would also like to add on. I think um the technical aspect I think is going to be common across like all roles, regardless of if you're in like product or consulting or sales or marketing. I think you have to have like a little idea of what is going on to the technology front, just because it's become so easy with the prevalence of AI. And me personally as well, being in like a more tech consulting role, I obviously use AI every day. But what I've also been noticing is people in different practices, like for example, HR consulting or like workforce consulting, as an instance, also have to, or not have to, but are more willing to use AI just because of all the benefits that come with it. But again, there's always an added risk for sure. But with that being said, I would like to ask back to you, obviously with the advent of AI, a lot of things have become automated, easier to do in a way, right? So what are some of the biggest challenges you faced previously, and are those challenges still relevant today?
Yeah, I think I talk about early 2000s or late 90s when we actually started to work with users and user research, for example. There was a lot of physical manual observation, shadowing the user through their daily work, even having cameras and recording, then coming back and transposing those into sticky notes on big walls. I mean, I'm sure you've seen memes and images of things like that. I've also seen, I still remember, even as recently or as early as when Google first started, I used to see strings of sticky notes outside certain windows as decorations. It was more or less like a string of an end-to-end process flow of a sticky note after observing what the user did. I think with AI, some of that will change, right? You don't need that much of time and effort to understand the users, to research. I remember going to multiple countries and having these one-way mirror cubicles or rooms, almost like an interrogation room, where we used to bring the users to work on specific scripts and observe their natural tendencies. And they would not be able to see us, but we would be able to see them. And there was one facilitator who would ask them to do certain things, and all we did was observe. I think some of those became redundant already because we now have HTML interfaces that can actually track user flows and user clicks and all of that, right? So I see that has evolved over time. So the amount of time it took for us to reach users across the globe and the time it took for us to synthesize what we found into actual problem statements, I think that's been the biggest change over the last decade or so. Going forward, I think some of the other challenges I see that will go away is, like I said, this fragmented processes. And I know I'm talking more about process than about the actual work itself of writing specifications, or Pavan, as you said, being technical enough to even write some early code. I remember that when I was writing specifications, I did not choose perfect English grammar. I instead chose pseudocode a lot, and I chose visuals and pictures because I felt that would communicate what I had to say and what was going on much more effectively than writing long words and sentences. And today I feel that's what's going to translate and bring some of these fragments together, because you have somebody at customer side talking to customers, so a technical consultant like yourself, Tej, and understanding what's going on and maybe influencing them to implement or use software in a particular way, even AI in a particular way, right? But you'll have to, like you said, explain to them why. And for that, you need to understand the technology behind it and how it works. A small segue, just this morning, I was trying to search for something for my mom on YouTube. And this is on YouTube, and she was just telling me, put the keywords, just say I'm searching for X music. And I said, Mom, that's a Google search. That's not a YouTube search. A YouTube search, you need to be a bit more specific about the type of music or the musician, or even the name of the program that she had heard from her friend. And then I was thinking, instead of explaining how to do it, if I could just tell her why. And I said, because the way YouTube segments are indexed, you know, it's like creating a file index where you're saying you're putting things that you need to read before you understand, versus just a random pattern-based understanding that you would do when you're looking at geometric designs. And this was just so that I could explain it in her language. And I realized it was so much more important for us to kind of translate technology into how they understand. And for that, you need to know the user. Now, I know my mom, so I was able to translate the two things, whether it was geometric patterns or whether it was file-based indexing, because I knew she did both. But I'm wondering, how would we do that with users, right? So what happens is you have a certain experience on the ground with customers. You try to translate that into product people that are sitting in offices and behind screens. I fundamentally think product people should be walking side by side with users and customers as often as possible, talking to them, interviewing them, just shadowing them. If you're working on an ag software, Pavan, you actually need to be on the field understanding what agronomists do, for example, right? So this is important, and we fail to do that. So we translate it into something behind computers and behind screens, try to put it into language that then we expect engineers and designers to understand. And then engineers and designers are building something, they're testing their code, but are they testing for the problem and whether the problem is solved? Are we actually incorporating not just quality, but also usefulness and usage into the testing process? Do product managers have a role to play in that? Absolutely, yes. I don't think product managers should just write test scripts and hand it over to engineers and QA. I think product managers should fundamentally be in the software, reviewing it, testing it, even the components of it, not only when it becomes a full-fledged end-to-end application, but testing small components of it, taking it to users, piloting it, and providing feedback. This is where I start to see breaks and fundamental challenges, when in the past we had different roles and functions doing different things. But as product managers become more holistic, I think they will be able to design experiences, get that validation upfront from users, share it with engineers, co-design the solution with engineers, not just sit separately and drop things into Jira and expect that you'll get a product at the end of it. So I hope that will be the change, and that's how we can solve some of those fragmentation challenges.
Just following up on that, on all of the challenges that you mentioned, they sound pretty unique for a product manager, and kind of hard to gain a lot of context if you're just trying to enter the industry for the first time. So if you were to go back to your beginning of your professional journey, would there be anything else you would do to break into the industry, or would you still pick a product role, or not? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's a great question. I think if I had to start over, I would absolutely still choose a career in product, because it's one area where you can build. Like I said, I love the build part of the product. Because and I also believe that if you didn't have a product, you don't have any of the other functions. You don't need workforce, you don't need sales, you don't need marketing. So fundamentally, product is the nucleus around which the business is built. And the product is not just a physical product, it can be a service, right? So it's goods or service, it doesn't matter, it's a product at the end of the day. Yeah, it's a product is a role that's very much suited for those who are naturally curious and enjoy a blend of strategy, technology, and human psychology, I believe. It's never boring. Every day brings a new challenge to solve. I believe it's one of the most dynamic and impactful roles in the industry today. So yes, I would go back to product. Actually, coming back to you, if you're not quite starting your career today, but you've started your careers recently, would you choose the same path you did, or would you veer towards product more?
Personally, I had some good experiences when I was in school that made me realize that I wanted to be in product. So maybe about halfway through school, I was able to focus more of my efforts on trying to land a product internship or learn more about the product industry than go into maybe consulting or software engineering. So, but I would say something that I would have done more is maybe explore more business cases or like kind of design hackathons, just kind of to refresh those skills and focus more on the value of the product and the design rather than just trying to scrap something together or having those technical skills.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
very, very
go ahead.
valid thing to do hands-on, and hackathons, unbelievable experience, just going into hackathons or even mock pitch decks and pitching new ideas, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. And me personally, I think consulting brings like a lot of variety in what we do, like just working with a range of different clients. Um, but it's definitely a great place to start, definitely a great place to learn. And I think you can make it as technical or as I guess client focused as you want. And there's a lot of different aspects to it, starting from strategy to governance to controls to frameworks and so on. So I think that's the aspect that I probably enjoy the most. But if I had to change and do something differently, I just wish I just learned more about like finance in college because that's just something I've always been interested in. But I guess you can learn anything at any time. It's not too late. But that's probably something I should actually start doing more of. Um, but kind of sidetracking here, Padmini, back in your university days, right? What did you do? What were some things you did outside of like regular schoolwork? Like were you part of any like clubs, any technology based clubs specifically that like push push you towards a career in STEM?
Yeah, it's interesting. It takes me back a number of years. So, as I mentioned, I studied commerce, right? So definitely global trade. Today, what you hear about as supply chains, global trade, those were all part of my curriculum. Accounting, obviously, finance, like you said. So I started on the other side, which is good in a way. It gave me some foundations. But actually dabbling with systems or computers, it started my very first job right out of college. I started in a bank. It's not on my LinkedIn. I never talk about it. So this is unique, but started in a bank, and the job in the bank was so boring that I had to find something interesting to do. So I saw this computer um, lab where those big mainframes and dot matrix printers were running and making a lot of noise, even through the air-conditioned like enclosure. And also the perfect way for me to be in an air-conditioned environment was actually going into the lab. And then I used to ask about 1,000 questions, very silly questions. But that sort of got me interested, and also got me that first opportunity where the director of the lab actually said, hey, with so many questions that you have, and looks like you have an interest, the bank can sponsor your computer education. Do you want to go try it out? And I'm like, that's how I got into a, a, a couple of years of studying, programming in COBOL, believe it or not, for banking. And that was interesting. Just how, my curiosity again, or just, you know, getting bored, but trying to do something different actually led to that. And that's what happened in the first 3, 4, 5 years, because I was in India and technology was just coming into play. I hadn't even seen a mouse until I went to a customer site in Singapore, where it was a Macintosh on a VAX VMS machine. I'm dating myself here, but I had no idea what that was. I looked at the Mac, I looked at this weird looking keyboard, I looked at this device, and they said that's a mouse. And I'm like, what is a mouse? Where are the buttons to click, right? I mean, you're so used to just typing and keyboarding that you didn't realize there's other ways of manipulating a screen. Today it's all ubiquitous, right? You don't even think about it. But yeah, that's how I started. I think seeking out not just technology experiences, but new experiences. I was part of the music club, which helped hone my creativity a lot. I also played badminton in college, and like any other sports, sports actually made me aware of what an adrenaline rush could look like and competitive spirit. What did that mean? And that's so important in product management. You want to be ahead of competition. You want to retain that competitive spirit in a good way, right? I also love travel. And so was fortunate enough with my dad to have traveled to so many factory sites where I saw technology in use, right? This was just machine automation, manufacturing, and early stage robots just doing things like, in the assembly line, packing stuff or dropping things into containers or bottling or, there's so many different varieties of technology that always fascinated me. And today we think of computer software as technology mainly, but every single aspect of human innovation, invention is technology. So those were some of my fun parts, not just at college, not unfortunately, not college was mostly music and sports, but outside of college was where I really got that first touch or first look at technology.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear that you were kind of sponsored into learning technology parts since it was so new back then. And that's a funny story about the mouse. Thank you for sharing that. But finally, just to tie everything together, if you were to give one piece of yourself to yourself as you were starting your professional career back in the day, what would it be?
Um, Talking to my younger self, huh? I would tell myself to prioritize courage over comfort, right? Don't just do what's comfortable to do, push yourself. So early in your career, it's natural to seek that external validation, and you usually fear making mistakes. I was fortunate that when I started my career when I was 18, and I was fortunate that senior leaders and companies I worked for actually gave me opportunities where I was able to go ahead and take those, had a lot of fear, a lot of trepidation, but still went ahead and did it. I would just tell myself back then that true confidence is not about having all the answers, right? It's about trusting in your ability to figure things out. And you could go wrong. It's fine. As long as there is the right leadership, right management to back you up, it's okay to be wrong because you learn so much more about making mistakes by making mistakes than from just doing everything right. I would encourage myself to embrace challenges and take on those stretch assignments instead of like taking the easy way out. Um, Not for praise or for like extra credits, but because that's those extra stretch assignments is what offers that growth. Confidence comes from that history of overcoming obstacles, right? So I would tell myself, just be yourself. You're doing just fine asking those silly questions, but then learn from your failures, right? And provide the opportunity to kind of discuss and ask, how can I rectify it? That's humility in a way, and it's very hard at 18, 19, 20 to be humble. Trust me. It was very, very hard, but I wish I was a bit more humble back then. And so anyway, the ability to be resilient over time, we learn that resilience comes from setbacks, and they are more valuable in the long term than getting everything right in the first time. It's about building that internal compass that says, I've handled this before and I can handle it again. So that's what I would tell my younger self. Build that internal compass.
Yeah, that's a really great piece of advice. Thank you for sharing. But yeah, that concludes our podcast. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tej. Thank you, Pavan, for having me.
Thank you.